right, there are two types of lymphocytes. Now, we're not talking about natural killer cells. Yes, those are a type of lymphocyte in the innate immune system. We're talking about adaptive. And in adaptive, there are two flavors of lymphocytes. So we have B lymphocytes and we have T lymphocytes. And they're all, remember, all lymphocytes look like this. They have that big old crazy nucleus that takes up basically the whole cell body. And remember, all blood cells, so both both B and T lymphocytes are born in the bone marrow. Because all blood cells are born in the bone marrow. And when they're born, they get to pick their receptor. And the receptor, that the choice of the receptor basically comes from genetics. Okay, so, we have a genetic library of all kinds of microorganisms and pathogens that could potentially invade us. So through gene shuffling, we get, a receptor that goes to each lymphocyte that gets created. So in a B lymphocyte, so here's my B cell, right? And the B cell, their receptor is actually an antibody. Crazy. So there are these little antibodies that are all over the plasma membrane. And they stick right out of the membrane here. And each of the little Y arms has a receptor site. And they're all the same. This one B cell is going to look for one specific antigen. And it's going to look kind of like that. Okay. That antibody, this little antibody, is called an IgD antibody. All right, so the B lymphocytes are basically the mediators of humoral immunity. And what is that? Well, humoral immunity, or humors, those are the fluids of the body. So basically, B cells make antibodies that will travel through the fluids, through the blood, looking for pathogens, their antigen. The target for humoral immunity is extracellular pathogens. So these are pathogens that can just float around the body, like bacterias. Okay. T lymphocytes, these look like, here's this, and T lymphocytes have this little different looking receptor. This is called a T cell receptor. And the T cells are part of the cell-mediated immunity. Okay, so basically the adaptive immune system has two parts, the humoral side and the cell-mediated. So T cells are part of the cell-mediated. And the target if you guessed intracellular pathogens, you would be correct. So intracellular pathogens like viruses, cancers, they're in the cell, okay? So that is their target. So these cells, when they're born, they actually are called, this one's called I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind for a moment. I'm ahead of myself. Okay, so when they're born, they're naive. Okay, so when they're born and they're matured, they become naive lymphocytes. So naive B cells and naive T cells. Well, once they're born, B cells stay in the bone marrow to mature. Okay, so B cell, bone marrow. T cells don't stay in the bone marrow. They leave and go to the thymus where they mature. So B cells mature in the bone marrow where they're born. And T cells mature in the thymus. So that's why bone marrow and the thymus are the two primary lymphoid organs, because this is where the cells come from. There's those two places. Okay, so when they mature, in their maturity process, they go to school, and they have to go to school so that they can figure out what they're looking for and be able to recognize it. Okay, so when they go out into the body, they know what to do. So we'll talk about lymphocyte school next.